In medieval France, eating was never just about taste. Meals unfolded under constant pressure from spoilage, scarcity, and fragile health. Fresh food could not be trusted for long, and digestion itself was a concern. Vinegar, drawn from soured wine or cider, entered daily cooking as a quiet solution. Its sharpness signaled safety, balance, and control in a world without refrigeration, laboratories, or medical certainty. In medieval France, the absence of refrigeration shaped every decision surrounding food. Fresh meat, fish, dairy, and cooked dishes could spoil within hours, especially in warmer seasons. Households rarely had the option to discard food freely. Waste meant hunger later. As a result, meals were often prepared with the expectation that they might be eaten again, reheated, or repurposed the following day. Preservation relied on basic methods such as salting, drying, smoking, and fermentation. These techniques slowed decay but did not eliminate risk. Cooked foods, once cooled, were particularly vulnerable. Stews and grain-based dishes might sit for long periods before the next meal, absorbing airborne bacteria and developing unpleasant odors. In this context, flavor and safety overlapped. Anything that could slow spoilage or mask early signs of decay had real value. Vinegar fit naturally into this system. Its acidity did not make food immortal, but it helped stabilize it for longer periods. Adding vinegar to sauces, soups, or reheated leftovers altered the environment in which bacteria thrived. Even modest amounts could make a difference over several hours. More importantly, vinegar signaled intention. The cook was actively managing risk, not ignoring it. Food in medieval France was therefore not static. It was adjusted, corrected, and balanced as conditions changed. Vinegar became one of the simplest tools for navigating uncertainty, allowing households to stretch meals across time without relying on technology they did not possess. Vinegar's widespread use was also tied to how easily it could be produced. In medieval France, wine was a daily staple across many regions. When wine spoiled or turned sour, it was rarely discarded. Instead, it became vinegar through natural fermentation. This process required no specialized equipment, no rare ingredients, and little technical knowledge. Time and exposure did most of the work. Households could produce vinegar on a small scale, while taverns, monasteries, and estates generated larger quantities simply through routine wine storage. Because of this, vinegar crossed social boundaries. Peasants, townspeople, and elites all had access to it, though quality varied. Unlike spices imported from afar, vinegar belonged to the local economy. It was familiar, affordable, and dependable. Its production fit neatly into domestic rhythms. There was no sharp divide between waste and resource. Sour wine became useful again, transformed into something that extended the life of other foods. This cycle reinforced a mindset of reuse rather than replacement. I am struck by how natural this process feels. Vinegar did not require innovation or ambition, only attention. Letting something turn sour, then accepting and repurposing it, reflects a quiet confidence in lived experience. It suggests a culture comfortable with gradual change, where usefulness mattered more than perfection, and patience turned loss into stability. In medieval France, the boundary between edible and dangerous food was often unclear. Without scientific understanding of bacteria, people relied on sensory signs, smell, taste, and appearance, to judge whether a meal was still usable. Vinegar played a crucial role in this fragile decision-making process. Its acidity altered the conditions in which spoilage advanced, slowing bacterial activity and delaying decay, even if only briefly. When added to stews, sauces, or reheated leftovers, vinegar reduced unpleasant odors and sharp off flavors that signaled early spoilage. This did not make food entirely safe by modern standards, but it made meals more acceptable and less risky within the knowledge of the time. In practical terms, vinegar bought time. It allowed food to remain usable for another meal, another evening, another day. This mattered deeply in households where food supply was uncertain. Extending the usability of meals reduced anxiety and stabilized daily routines. A pot of grain or vegetables could stretch across several days, adjusted with vinegar as conditions changed. The ingredient became part of an ongoing negotiation between hunger and caution. I can sense how reassuring this must have been. Adding vinegar was a small, visible action that signaled care and control. It allowed people to feel they were actively protecting themselves, even when certainty was impossible. That sense of reassurance, quiet, practical and repeated, may have been just as valuable as the physical effect itself. Medieval medical thought strongly influenced how food was prepared and consumed. In France, dietary choices were shaped by humoral theory, which divided the body into balances of hot, cold, wet, and dry. Foods were not neutral. They carried qualities that could either restore or disrupt internal harmony. Vinegar, with its sharp and cooling nature, was believed to counter excess heat and richness. Heavy foods such as meat, fats, and thick stews were thought to strain the body, especially in warm weather or among those with weaker digestion. Vinegar was added to these dishes to temper their effects. It was believed to aid digestion, prevent stagnation in the stomach, and cool internal heat. Meals were adjusted not only for taste, but for perceived bodily balance. This connection between food and medicine blurred the line between kitchen and clinic. Everyday cooking became a form of preventative care. Vinegar's role was therefore not incidental. It aligned with prevailing ideas about health and moderation. Using it regularly reinforced the belief that diet could maintain stability in the body, just as it did in food itself. Daily meals in medieval France were often repetitive and restrained. For most households, especially outside noble circles, food consisted largely of grains, legumes, vegetables, and small amounts of fat. Meat appeared irregularly, and spices were limited or expensive. In this context, flavour was not about variety, but about making familiar ingredients tolerable over time. Vinegar provided contrast. Its sharpness cut through the heaviness of grains and the earthiness of vegetables. Even a small splash could transform a pot of beans or a bowl of porridge, creating a sense of difference without changing the core ingredients. This mattered in diets defined by routine. When meals looked similar day after day, minor adjustments helped prevent fatigue and loss of appetite. Unlike sweeteners or imported spices, vinegar did not overwhelm. It sharpened rather than masked flavours. Combined with herbs, oils, or animal fats, it created balance rather than richness. This made it especially suitable for modest cooking, where excess was neither affordable nor desirable. Flavour in this sense served a functional purpose. Enjoyable food encouraged consistent eating, which supported health and labour capacity. Vinegar's role in taste was therefore closely tied to survival. It helped people continue eating the same foods without resistance, ensuring that nutrition, however limited, was reliably consumed. Over time, vinegar ceased to feel like an addition and became an expectation. In medieval French kitchens, it was mixed routinely into stews, sauces, and soups, often without remark. Cooks combined it with herbs, oils, or rendered fats, adjusting quantities by habit rather than measurement. Its use was regular, not exceptional. This repetition shaped taste. Meals without vinegar could feel flat or incomplete, even if nutritionally identical. The ingredient became part of the sensory baseline of everyday eating. Children grew accustomed to its sharpness early, and adults associated it with normal, well-prepared food. What began as a practical choice evolved into a culinary norm. Vinegar's integration also reflected predictability. It was available, affordable, and familiar. Unlike seasonal ingredients that came and went, vinegar remained constant throughout the year. This reliability reinforced its place in daily routines, anchoring meals in continuity rather than novelty. I feel that vinegar gradually stopped being a seasoning and became part of how meals were expected to taste. Its presence signaled normality and care, not experimentation. That quiet consistency feels deeply human. It reminds me that habits form not through preference alone, but through repetition under necessity until usefulness becomes comfort. Climate played a subtle but constant role in medieval French food practices. During warm summers, higher temperatures accelerated spoilage and made heavy meals uncomfortable to digest. Without ice or cold storage, kitchens had to adjust not only what was eaten, but how food felt in the body. Vinegar offered a practical response to these seasonal pressures. Acidic foods were believed to cool the body and reduce internal heat. Dishes flavoured with vinegar felt lighter and more refreshing, particularly when combined with vegetables or diluted sauces. This made them suitable for summer meals, when labour continued but appetite often declined. Vinegar did not eliminate heat, but it helped people endure it. From a practical standpoint, vinegar also reduced the risk of rapid spoilage during hot weather. Food left out between meals deteriorated faster in summer, increasing anxiety around consumption. Adding vinegar slowed this process just enough to make daily routines manageable. Its use aligned naturally with seasonal rhythms, becoming more prominent when conditions demanded greater caution. Rather than resisting climate, medieval cooks adapted to it. Vinegar functioned as a quiet mediator between environment and diet, helping meals remain tolerable and usable when heat threatened both comfort and safety. Food waste was not a moral concern in medieval France, it was a material danger. Losing edible food meant greater vulnerability in the days ahead. Vinegar supported a culture of careful reuse, allowing older ingredients to be incorporated safely into new meals. Leftover grains, vegetables, or meats were rarely discarded outright. Instead, they were reheated, diluted, or reshaped into soups and stews. Vinegar helped make these mixtures more acceptable by reducing off odours and sharpening taste. This encouraged reuse rather than disposal, stretching limited supplies further. Preservation was not about abundance, but efficiency. Vinegar allowed households to manage decline rather than avoid it. Food aged, but it did not immediately become useless. This mindset favoured adaptation over perfection, acknowledging that meals existed on a continuum rather than a binary of fresh or spoiled. In this way, vinegar supported a food economy based on continuity. It helped households navigate scarcity without excess, reinforcing habits of restraint and resourcefulness that defined medieval survival. Vinegar in medieval France was never treated as a luxury. It was not reserved for feasts, nor associated with status or refinement. Instead, it belonged to the everyday kitchen, used by peasants, artisans, and townspeople as a matter of routine. Its presence reflected normal life rather than special occasions. Because vinegar was locally produced and inexpensive, it circulated widely. Households did not measure its value in rarity, but in reliability. It was poured into pots without ceremony, adjusted by taste and experience. This ordinariness mattered. It meant that vinegar shaped what normal food tasted like across regions and classes. Over time, vinegar helped define a shared culinary baseline. Medieval French meals were not expected to be rich or complex, but they were expected to be balanced and manageable. Vinegar contributed to that expectation. It sharpened flavours, stabilised food, and aligned meals with prevailing health beliefs, all without drawing attention to itself. In this sense, vinegar reveals how medieval taste was formed less by aspiration than by repetition. What people ate daily became what they recognised as proper food. Vinegar did not stand out. It blended in, reinforcing habits that felt natural precisely because they were practical. Vinegar's role in medieval France was quietly comprehensive. It supported food safety, improved flavour, aligned with medical beliefs, and fit seamlessly into daily routines. Its widespread use reflected the constraints of environment, technology, and knowledge, but also the ingenuity with which people adapted to them. Food choices were not random or careless. They balanced necessity with belief and caution with habit. Vinegar exemplified this balance. It was not a symbol of refinement, but a response to real conditions: spoilage, heat, scarcity, and fragile health. Small adjustments, repeated daily, shaped long-term survival. I am struck by how such a simple ingredient carried so many functions at once. Vinegar mattered not because it was refined, but because it quietly solved everyday problems. Its usefulness accumulated over time, becoming part of life rather than a solution that needed explanation. This history reminds us that medieval diets were adaptive systems, not unsanitary improvisations. Understanding why vinegar was used helps us move beyond modern assumptions and appreciate how people managed food safety, health, and taste long before modern science, through observation, habit, and restraint.